Hello and welcome back to the first roundtable GTC discussion. If you were with us at the beginning, you'd have seen our little chat with Ollie Wiggins, Marcus Liversedge, Will Churchill and Hannah Demidovich, and covered pretty much lots of subjects there, talking to Ollie and Marcus about the I'll Get This program that they both worked on, and then touching on other subjects like COVID and Will's lack of travel and plenty of other things. I think you'll find that if you didn't see it, it is available on our Vimeo channel, so you'll be able to get a link from the GTC website for that later on. Hopefully you did see it and you're looking forward to part 2, where we've got Laura Offer, Nick Hutchins, Matt Graff and Klaus Friedrichsen all joining us. If you stayed with us during the little break we had then, you'd have seen some great footage from some of our awards from last year, and particularly some of the student films that we have awarded, which were, as you saw, at a really high standard. Anyway, let's start part 2 of this first roundtable off. I'd like to introduce Laura Offer. Laura is a senior producer with 15 years cross-genre TV experience, which includes crime, science, stunts and engineering. She's currently working on the 3rd series of Body Cam for Discovery, which has continued production throughout the pandemic. Laura has experience working with US and UK broadcasters from development through to final post. Laura, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, it's we've got a few glitches here and there at the very beginning, but all fingers crossed, looking good now. So tell us a bit about yourself and how you started in the industry and where you are now.
I started as a runner at ITV and sort of started in entertainment and kind of moved across to factual and got sort of more and more factual. It sort of went from light entertainment to factual entertainment to now true crime at the moment. So it's been a fairly broad career, but variety's good, right? So yeah, and then
it's good. It's always good to diversify, that's for sure.
Exactly, especially this year. Yeah, and then I'm currently working at Arrow Media, which I've been there for 2 years now on Bodycam. It's the show that keeps running, so it's sort of God willing at the moment. But yeah, it's been an interesting year. There have been times when it's felt like we've been perilously, like so close to having to stop, but we've managed to kind of continue through completely different approaches to how we film this series, but trying to remain loyal to the crew and the production staff and all the promises that we've made. Just tried so hard to kind of keep everyone on and sort of honor as many contracts as possible, but by doing things in a completely different way. So it's been a tough year, but we're delivering shows, which I'm so proud of. So, yeah.
Absolutely. If you can deliver shows in the current environment, it's definitely something to be proud of. So talk us through Body Cam and Box Cam. What are those?
Yeah, so I started in March, and the idea was to send 6 crews, which would have been a DOP, a director and an AP, out to America to film with loads of different police forces. All the access had come off the back of us finding body cam videos where sort of all kinds of, anything that's kind of caught a body cam we were interested in exploring, really. So a variety of different stories. That was the plan. 2 weeks into production starting, lockdown happened. And at that point, it was kind of, I don't know, those early days in March, it really was a sort of question of how long is this going to continue? We knew we had until the summer to find these stories, get them signed off, and then sort of set these crews on their way. So initially, it was just like, we've just got to hold our nerve. This is all going to be okay. And the more we moved through, the more apparent it became that we weren't going to be sending anyone from the UK anywhere for the first couple of blocks. So we're like, right, okay, we need to find a solution for that. So actually, it was the guys in post had suggested the use of the system called a box cam, which is from a company called QuickLink, and is video conference technology, essentially, with a camera in it. And what it would allow is, in the worst case scenario, we would have been able to send it to the contributor or to the police officer. They would have been able to set it up themselves, disinfect it. We would have been able to log in from London and then film the interview that way. So that was the kind of idea. And then as we did rehearsals with it and tried, it sort of became apparent, right, we still need DOPs with this, because you still need to frame the shot, you still need to light the shot. There's things that we can do, but you still need that kind of, that person overseeing everything. So that is one of the solutions that we used to continue filming. Yeah, it's a system where you've got, you can have sort of most Panasonic cameras work in it, basically. And we can send it to a contributor in a couple of Peli cases. But you just sort of plonk it on a sort of tripod, and then from London, the DOP can control the lighting and the sound and the picture. And importantly, especially on a show like Bodycam, where we're asking police officers to talk about being shot at or something, it's very emotional. They can sort of, a bit like the eye direct, they can see the director's face in the camera down the lens. So, you know, I would rather that the human touch was there and people were in the room with these people as they recount these stories, but it hasn't been possible this year. So it's been a solution. it's worked. Yeah. So it's a simple system.
I'm sure, like Nick, who had probably some very funny moments with the MTV blagging things. Did you have some unusual phone calls with people going, "Sorry, your box isn't working"? And was there, you know, like, have you tried turning it on, putting a battery in? How simple was it for them to use?
Yeah, we couldn't figure out why at one point we couldn't work out why everything was so dark at one point. And it was a case of we had to physically move the lights because the contributor had set them up much further away than we'd anticipated. So we were like sort of at one point kind of going, we're gonna have to get a new camera out, there's clearly a fault. No, it was a very very simple solution. Can you just sit a little bit closer to the lights? That would be great. But it took us a sort of worrying amount of time to figure out that was the solution. So a few moments like that. But you know, you've got no one in the room, so it's hard sometimes to get a sense of you can see the contributor, but perhaps the setup you're missing. So weird sort of environment sometimes.
Yeah, you almost need the second camera for the overview, so you can see what's going on, don't you? Nick Hutchings is a series producer with 25 years experience on shows such as Big Brother, Gordon Ramsay's F Word, and Alan Carr's Grand National Spectacular. He's a kids TV specialist, winning a BAFTA for the series Help, My Supplies Teacher is Still Magic, and has been nominated for Art Ninja as well. So Nick, welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I had a sort of unorthodox path into TV, basically. I wanted to be a music journalist originally. I thought I had plans to write for the NME and all that. So I wrote a punk rock fanzine. And I just happened to meet the MTV presenter Toby Amy's at a gig and handed it to him. And I bumped into him about a week later at another gig, and he said, "Oh, he'd mentioned the fanzine on the air." And I said, "Oh, can I do some work experience there?" And he said, "Yeah, here's my number. But you're going to have to hassle me and bully me." So, you know, you could never get in touch with him. But I just left progressively more interesting messages on his voicemail, and eventually got to go in and got a sort of job to help with their punk rock special, and stayed there for 10 years, basically. So I ended up producing, helped launch MTV2 there, and MTV Base, and channel manager of MTV2, and I was the inaugural head of development there as well. So I was a staffer, but you know, in 2006 I left, took redundancy, and it was like starting all over again, basically. You know, the contacts and everything, you know. So, but it was some sort of fortune came my way because I'd done this show at MTV that I'd commissioned and then series produced, which was called MTV Blaggers. And it featured people trying to blag their way into stuff, celebrity events and whatnot. And one of the guys that did it, somebody from the BBC phoned me up for a reference for him, just to see whether he was who he said he was, and he was genuinely trying to get a job in TV, and he was. Anyway, that guy, the David Morgenstern, the guy at BBC Format Entertainment Development, he ended up giving me my job there. So that sort of launched me into the freelance fraternity, if you will. So yeah, so and then I did, as you mentioned, Big Brother, The F Word, Gordon Ramsay, a lot of kids TV. And that's been my big thing. It ranges in sort of style, though, between, Help My Supply Teacher Is Still Magic was hidden camera magic show where we'd go into schools with magicians pretending to be teachers, and they'd do lessons which seemed kind of like they were real, often science, because that lends itself to magic quite well. And then it would be something crazy would happen. So somebody would fly around the room, or we'd cut cut someone in half, or, all the classic magic things. And then, we'd pounce on the kids, and it was the best day they had ever, basically. So I've done sort of that, but then I've also done Art Ninja, as you mentioned, which is kind of like a sitcom style, I suppose. It's like an art show, like Art Attack, but with a sitcom story. So much more blocked, lots of set pieces, very, proper camera, that kind of thing. So that's where I've got so far. But yeah. Go on, you interject, otherwise I'll just keep talking.
Nick, have you had work over this period, or are you struggling for work at the moment?
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about the last couple of years, because I've done 3 projects which have all been quite different from a camera perspective, since we're here to talk about cameras as much as anything. And I'm not a very technical person, but I thought I should at least give you a little insight into the kind of variety of stuff I end up doing with setups. And the first one was it was in 2019, when the world was normal, and it was a show called Craft Party, which was another art series for CBBC. Unlike Art Ninja, it was supposed to be more like Why Don't You, if you're old enough to remember. Well, no, you are, Graham, but if you're old enough to remember Why Don't You, with kids doing art themselves, basically. So when I went into the company. That obviously, they knew I'd done an art show. I had to kind of restructure how it was all planned, because they wanted they kind of half expected the kids to do all the art themselves, whereas I knew that they weren't going to be quite good enough without help. These were all first-time presenters, kids aged sort of 10 to 14, with an interest in art, but we'd need a whole team of an art team, probably, which they hadn't been thought about properly. But then also camera-wise, they wanted to film it with 2 shooting PDs. A PD and a shooting AP. 2 cameras, but in a kind of reality style, which I knew CBBC might not go for. Only in the sense that art has just got to look great. It has to look great. You've got to have the beauty shots, and the only way to do that is to have a proper lighting camera person, or a DOP, basically. In fact, I've got your good friend Andy Reich filmed that for me, and it was a great job. But I knew that from experience that there was no way we could cover it like a reality show. It just wasn't going to be good enough. So that's one thing. But then after that, I went on to win a commission for, and then work on a show, documentary for about Bhangra music for Red Bull TV, which budgets are tight for them, but their expectations are sky high in terms of how they want it to look, really they want a DOP that's an auteur. They constantly use the word auteur. But obviously we couldn't really afford that. We had to have a PD, and then I wish I could know where I know, for instance, like Andy could do a great production job as well as film, but like you don't necessarily know where all those people are that could do all those things. So, you end up sort of going for a PD because they're easier to find. We got a good guy, but we end up compromising as well by getting a brilliant DOP in for a sort of set piece at the end of the Bhangra doc, where we got a massive dance together with lots of disparate groups around Birmingham. And we used the DOP Lorenzo Levrini, who did Gun Number 6, which I think won a BAFTA. And weirdly, he said the place that we filmed the Bhangra sort of final dance in was literally a street away from where he'd filmed the reconstructions of Gun Number 6, which was, he said it was a slightly happier occasion on the Bangor one, obviously. So that's that. But like that brings me to where can I find somebody that's sort of a camera person first and foremost that can also produce and gain trust of contributors and that kind of thing. That would have been my ideal, really, because otherwise I'm hiring someone that's, although I don't like to sling a camera around these days, I'm hiring someone that's basically like myself but can use a more modern camera. You know, I'd rather have an actual expert, really. And so then the last thing, just to go on.
Sorry, Nick, just interrupting there quickly. Do you think then there's like a post for people in the GTC to think about where we should be looking at becoming cameramen producers rather than the PD role that we know it all exists and takes a lot of people's work away? Various arguments for and against it, obviously, but you think there might be a DOP producer type role that would help you?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And I don't know where you would find those people when you're looking. I mean, obviously, when I look for staff, I usually look on Talent Manager, but also, funny, I watched your previous thing and Hannah was talking about LinkedIn. I do use LinkedIn. So, I mean, personally, I'm a freelancer and I'm always working on very different projects. So on a personal level, if you are interested in working with me, I would try and link in with me, because I'll literally link in with anybody that works in TV, you know, that has got any expertise in TV, because you never know. But in terms of a forum, you know, where that person could be, I don't know, but it would be good to know where those people are that are interested in that. Not everyone is, of course. So
that's interesting you say that, though, Nick, because it's obviously, as most people are in our industry are freelance now, or certainly the vast majority. It's one of the things that has always been in the back of everyone's mind is, where do you advertise? Where do you get the work? And I would have said that probably over the years, 90% or more of my work has been either repeat business or word of mouth recommendations from someone I've worked with. But it's interesting that you would go with LinkedIn rather than maybe talking to other people who you've worked with already.
Well, it depends, doesn't it? It depends what's this expertise, you know, like obviously I've found people that way before. But, you know, recommendations are always useful. I mean, like drone photography, you know, obviously now that's more common. But like back in when I first used a drone operator, you know, I had to find someone like from nowhere, basically, you know. So, but you're right. I mean, I'll come on to this in a second, because I wanted to kind of give advice to how to hustle and, you know, what to do and what's worked for me and what's worked on the receiving end in a minute. But I would say that, you know, you've got to just meet and make as big a network as you can, however you can do it, you know.
So just briefly before you do that, Laura, how have you found getting crews or people, or like getting the work even?
I tend to use crews first that I know. But then what sort of happened is they've then recommended people that I've, you know what I mean? If a certain person can't do a job, but they vouch for someone, I'm happy to kind of go down that link. That's great for me. That's really good. I've met loads of people that way that I wouldn't have usually kind of come into contact with. We've had to use some local crew in America that is challenging. The variety and the cost is, you don't quite know what you're going to get back. So we've had to we did some things to standardize sort of filming against a black background and anything to kind of cut out any sense of, we were worried about that. But predominantly I will try and work with people I know and trust. And I think that what you're talking about with a kind of sort of producer, more of a kind of a camera operator that is a producer, that isn't something I've massively considered before. But I don't, now you're saying it, I don't really know why not. It seems like, why not go the other way? We've got PD shooting, so perhaps we should be looking at kind of training camera operators in the kind of what they need to consider outside of of what they already know from a shoot. It's that, you know, like the kind of scheduling and that side of things. It's a slightly different way of working. When you're used to sort of turning up on a day, you know, planning and things. But I don't see why most people, if you didn't want to do that, why you wouldn't very quickly pick up the skills to do it.
I think probably you're right. Although Nick, I'm surprised that I would have thought most cameramen think they're in charge of the job and producing and everything, and probably sound as well, to be honest. Because we know we can all do it better than everyone else. So I'm surprised that you find it hard to find that great know-all people. That we've got a whole guild full of them. I'm sure I can help you. Just one last thing before I introduce Matt from Zigzag, who's with us as well. Just run through then quickly, Nick. How would we hassle you, or what was your best hassling?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I was going to just say, in terms of you know, at the moment, obviously, our industry is a hustle always. You know, regardless of COVID, it's an invisible jobs market most of the time. You know, and it's funny because I wrote my fanzine back in the day, hoping that you know, it would lead to something, and it did. And I kind of still write it. I write it as a blog. I do a little, you know, everyone's got a podcast these days, but I do a little radio show on it and stuff. And because it keeps me busy, you know, in between jobs, you know, and I would say the good thing is that everyone on this call is probably, well, they're going to be creative in some way, you know, and you know, it's like, even with I mean, I write as well, so I'm always writing. But you know, if you're a camera person, you know, I'm sure you could be doing, you know, there's some interest you've got in new kit or over a short film or whatever, if you've got time and inclination, obviously. But what I would then say is, then you've shown that you're busy, and then you've always got something to talk about when you come to hassle or hustle someone. And I was going to give you an example of, so obviously I kind of prodded, you know, via loads of phone messages, this producer, presenter, you know, to get a job. But basically the same thing happened to me when I was at MTV. Whereby I got this guy, he was calling me all the time. He'd sent in these VHS tapes, and he said, "Oh, you've really got to watch him. You've got to watch him." And I was like, "Okay, I will." Eventually, I thought, I've just got to watch him just to shut this guy up, you know, because it's just getting on my nerves now, you know. And they were basically like what I would call like cut and shut edits, you know, like frame cut edits of films. Like, I think there was like Eyes Wide Shut, where he'd done a loop between Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman looking at each other, like a circular loop, which was never ending. And that felt like different, you know, at the time. And we'd been doing some stuff on MTV2 where we've been editing bands together, so it sounds like they were saying things about MTV2 which we were only able to get away with for a short time. But you know, like making the Arctic Monkeys say we were great and all that, you know. And anyway, so he was very much on those lines. So I thought, this guy is amazing. So we got him in and gave him work experience, and then he worked for a bit longer for us. Anyway, his name was Sam Faramand, and he's gone on to sort of make music videos with Janet Jackson and Mick Jagger and Mark Ronson and stuff. So it's not like I discovered him or anything. He discovered himself. But you know, like, we gave him a leg up, and I only gave him a leg up because he hassled me. And I know not everyone likes to be hassled, and it would be interesting to see what Matt says about that. But I like to, you know, make sure that I'm visible, you know. So, you know, always using everything you've got to talk about. Make sure you've got something new to talk about. Maybe if it's something new you've done, you know, and it doesn't have to be something you've got paid to do. Just keep busy and keep hustling is all I can say. COVID hasn't really changed that, other than maybe there's less opportunities out there at the moment, but it feels the same when you're just sitting at home doing that stuff. So just do it.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, let's introduce and bring into the conversation Matt Graf. Matt is the MD of Zigzag, and he manages all their commercial opportunities, off-air rights exploitations, as well as the management and creation of new content, and certainly is involved with the Zigzag YouTube channels, which is probably where we find people nowadays, much more, I would say. Like, I would think, if correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but YouTube is probably full of people who are trying to get into telly, and that's a good starting point for them nowadays.
It certainly is. There is a huge amount of skill on that platform. It doesn't always cross over, but I think that we are seeing more and more of it cross over. I mean, I think that the the likes of YouTube breaking into originals, trying to compete on some level, although not with the same type of platform, but in the quality of programming they're producing with the likes of Netflix and Amazon. I mean, they're producing less of it, but they're producing some really high quality originals. And I think that's based on the fact that they've got so many great creators going on behind the scenes.
And just talk us through some of your recent productions and what's going on at the moment with you, Matt.
Well, I think it's all change, really, isn't it? As it has been for everybody. I think, how did Hannah put it in your last session, that COVID has accelerated change, which I thought was absolutely spot on. We have seen the rise of the SVOD and also the AVOD platforms, and lots of people competing for that high-end content. Unfortunately, I think not, you get a global player like a Netflix or an Amazon, they'll never be commissioning as much as the individual terrestrials were or are commissioning. So there's going to be some time before they make up for what I feel is a sort of slight decline in commissioning. But it's certainly heading in the right direction. And I think, the likes of Disney launched to probably unprecedented numbers. I don't think they expected to do so well at the beginning. But I think beyond that, the change for a production company like ours is that we are being forced to consider multiple clients where we used to have one. We can't now just go to the BBC or ITV only. We have to try and work out international co-pros, how to find advertisers to help fund, how to find distributors to deficit fund international sales through international sales advances. So, in the days where we used to do one deal, we're now doing 3 or 4. But I think that's part of the hustle and part of what we've got to do to make shows and get things on air.
Well, I know you did work at some point with or helped launch some of the MTV stuff, didn't you? Did you work alongside Nick at all, or was that separate eras?
No, we definitely crossed over. I had a long old stint at Viacom as a coming up from junior roles through to being a producer, director, and then into channel launches and commissioning. And it really it taught me a lot about most areas of television production and channel business. And I think that the only reason that I find myself in a managing director's role at an indie now is because I learned all aspects of the business at somewhere like MTV. Companies like that had no money in those days. So we worked on zero budget, just the kit that was in the cupboard and the editing kit that was downstairs, or the studios that were available to us, which are things you don't get now, but it meant we did everything. I think in my first ever week working there, I was thrown into the director's chair and told to direct a live studio show, and it was like bonkers because that just doesn't happen in the real world. But it certainly taught me a thing or two about how to make TV and how to solve problems better than a lot of people do.
And with that in mind, how has COVID affected your planning of what's coming up with Zigzag and adapting for things?
We're thrown it out the window. I mean, I think when COVID hit, I think we had 5 productions in various stages of production for different broadcasters. I think they all went offline. We had to stop all of them. 4 of them, thankfully, have come back. One of them still to be finished. One of them we made last summer by creating bubbles and adding quite a lot of bit of PPE expense and trying to work it out, but finding some creative solutions on how to manage a shoot of the scale that one was. It was a big sort of reality show. And we had another sort of feature documentary we were working on where we just realized that we had to have separate US crew director to what was going on anywhere else, and a lot of file sending and sharing. What I will say is that other than the one show that hasn't come back, which was really a big medical travel show series, which, you know, obviously ticks boxes for travel and medical of things that you can't really go near and touch during COVID without causing a lot of problems. Everything else has happened, and we've found creative ways of making it happen, or procedural ways. And, you know, I won't lie, it's been a total pain in the arse, and it's, you know, shrunk our margins and everything else. But at the same time, we've managed to get stuff on air, and we've, you know, and proudly so. You know, you finish a production under COVID, it goes out on the channel, and you get very excited.
Yeah, and obviously there's that side of it, the planning and producing of the actual programs. And what about with commissioning? Are you finding that it's easier to speak to commissioning editors, trying to offer them what they want? Is it harder? Are they more open to any suggestions because they're just trying to get some footage, some programs at the moment?
No, I think there was a mad moment where they were like, well, what have you got in your library? What can we acquire? And then that so quickly dissipated. That was during sort of lockdown 1, the movie. And we've moved on from that a bit. And people have started looking at what you've actually can make under COVID without it looking like it's a coronavirus production, because no one wants things that feel like, I don't know, like a news report with people separated. Everyone wants things to look as natural as possible, even though we're not filming in a natural environment. So I think the ideas have really started, you know, take travel out the equation and things like that. Everything started getting a little bit back to the normal commissioning structure. What we have done, or what I have found, is that we've got a lot more access to those commissioning editors. I think someone said it in your earlier session. They are available. They're at home like everyone else is. They're on a Zoom. You don't have to traipse across London or go somewhere else to get a meeting and go, all right, I can only fit 3 meetings in today because half of it's travel time. I can have a bunch of meetings in the morning with clients from Asia, and then move to Europe, then move to the UK, and then move to America. So I'm feeling like we've gone truly global during the pandemic because we can, and people are listening. And that's really exciting. So we've got co-productions going on at the moment with Dutch, American, and British companies, because we've been able to talk to them all and bring them all together in this way. And everyone's been totally open to those multinational co-pro opportunities, all done from our living rooms.
Yeah, that's great. You can actually do a full 24/7 of Zoom calls and work your way around the world, and maybe get more work for it. Nick, how about you? Are you finding it easier to get in touch with people and get stuff?
Well, I've not been on the front line in develop. I do a lot of development, but I've not been doing that lately. I mean, last year was mostly full of doing the show Step Up to the Plate, which was it's a CBBC restaurant competition show with Fred Sirieix, which basically meant that, you know, we got 2 episodes in for the first lockdown hit. And then we got quite creative with sort of bubbles, as Matt mentioned, and PPE, and a really strong protocol. And we managed to come back and film a whole load more in September. And then, just as it looked like we were going to go full lockdown again in November, we filmed the last bit. But fortunately, obviously, we were allowed to film still. So it's taken longer to get stuff done. But we have managed to make it. One, we had to match it up with what we'd filmed before. And 2, we've managed to make it look, like a show that's not made in COVID, like Matt said. So mostly through bubbling up the production, the odd screen, I suppose, but not in your face in the kitchen, and just making sure the camera crew were not completely exposed. So one of our cameramen had he was in the kitchen, but because he had to wear a visor, but he couldn't look through the viewfinder, he had to fashion a swimming goggles one out so he could use that. So he looked quite a sight, you know. And I've got another good camera story as well on Step Up. So we had our DOP, he left during the filming. He had 1 day away where he was on another production, but their protocol obviously wasn't quite as tight because, we'd had to test everybody like diners, guests, presenters, crew, chaperones, kids, loads of people, and that meant we had to cut 2 episodes from the series because of it. Not that you'd know. But we had one camera guy, our DOP, he left during it. He came back. He was going to come back, but he couldn't because contributors in the other show had got COVID. So he wasn't allowed. So we had to get another camera person at short notice, and we got them tested within the day. But then he had to come up and sit in a car until 3 or 4 in the afternoon until he got the all clear, and then he came in and carried on. But fortunately, he had a couple of days' work after that. But and we'd had an assistant cover his camera just before that. So it was those kind of crazy things, I suppose. But we've got the show made. Edit produced it. I edit produced a load of it as well remotely, and it's on now. So it's on a Tuesday night. So that, and then in terms of keeping busy, I did some script editing for Bite Size Daily, which was the BBC education content designed to keep the kids going in lockdown, which was commissioned in lockdown 1. Which now they're still showing again in, unfortunately, I thought, oh, I'll get another job with that. But no, they're showing all the same stuff on BBC 2 at the moment. So I've got loads of shows on because they re-showed Art Ninja as well as part of the BBC Learning. So I've got 3 shows on, but obviously not getting, I could use another job, but I'm doing some writing at the moment on a corporate. So keeping busy, but, hopefully more will come as the spring comes,
That's good to hear. Good to hear. And Laura, presumably your boxes don't get COVID. So have you had any other issues with having to get them all cleaned and things when they come back, or make sure that everything's all right before they go, or having to take stuff in when you're putting them out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a big fear of mine, just because we're filming with cops who are out in the public, very close contact with people. So I'm actually quite surprised at the contact we've had with COVID being not too heavy. We've had officers where we have filmed and they've later had a positive test, but it hasn't transferred to anyone on our production. Like occasionally we have had to sort of film with crew and stuff. So, touch wood, our sort of protocols are working, and we are not spreading kind of COVID everywhere. So I'm kind of really proud of that. But, it's not just COVID that's been challenging this year. We're obviously filming with American police in a climate where they're facing a lot of scrutiny, rightly or wrongly. There is a real fear of what our show is going to say about them. So it's been challenging on sort of 2 different fronts this year, both getting the access and getting them to trust that we are not going to editorialize and we're not really here to comment on problems within the sort of police forces over there, and sort of deal with COVID. So I'm astonished every day that I wake up and I'm still doing this job. I'm very thankful for it as well. So yeah, tough going sometimes.
No, I'm sure it is, and we're very thankful that you've taken the time to join us. So talking about America and everywhere else, let's bring in someone else who's one of our newest GTC members, is Klaus Friedrichsen. He's based in Denmark now. I think Klaus, you did spend some time in London in your early years, didn't you? But Denmark is his home and is where he's living. And it'd be interesting to find out from you, Klaus, how differently it's affected your industry or our industry in your country. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for this. It's been really interesting for the past hour and a half, I must say. We haven't been struck as hard in Denmark as the rest of the world, regarding the virus. Of course, it's been a lockdown 1 and 2, but I mean, it's not as we haven't gone into panic. The first 4, 5, 6 weeks, like everywhere else, we didn't know what was up and down, and then slowly things got into motion again. But the ironic thing is, when that began, half of, especially the freelance cameraman, was almost drowning in work, and the other half didn't have anything at all. Ironically enough, while we've been sitting here and I've been watching all of you, I got 2 emails coming in from the UK and 1 from the States regarding jobs. And unfortunately, some of my camera colleagues over here haven't been that fortunate. So that's more or less what it is right now, and the way it's been looking for the past 6-7 months. So
So you've sound like you've managed to work pretty much throughout the whole time. For people who haven't, what sort of help has there been for them from your government?
I mean, when the first lockdown came in, and it just came out of nowhere. I believe you all can agree on that. Personally, I was in Istanbul on a shoot and had to call a friend of mine who was working for a company who I knew had a private jet down there, and I wanted to see if I could get a ride home prior to what my ticket said in the first place. But everything was just weird the first 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. And then things start to kick in, the proper organizations in Denmark, the police, school, hospitals were taken care of to begin with, all the stuff that a society needs to have running 100% to be able to exist. I know we think a lot about ourselves in the television industry, but we're not that important. And then finally, we ended up with us, the freelance cameramen or freelance carpenters or just small companies. And we were given, I think we discussed this last week, Graham, about just less than 3,000 quid per person from the government, just been paid out, and for 3 months, to begin with, just to make sure that everybody had something to do with it. And the banks stopped asking for the VAT, and those who already paid the VAT from the companies, they were just simply giving those payments back from the banks. So it was very smooth in that matter. And the two major networks in Denmark, state-run TV2 and Denmark's Radio, their regular staff actually gave up, I think, 2 or 3 or 4 bank holidays, and those money saved by the networks were giving to their regular freelancers. Because if you're a regular freelancer at a network, you're most likely just to have that one client. So they were even more exposed to this, where a regular freelance like me, I have different clients all over the place. So I wasn't as vulnerable as they were. So that worked out quite well, I think.
That certainly sounds like you were well looked after over there, which is fantastic. In fact, I'll look up Rishi Sunak's email for you, and you can maybe drop him a line on our behalf, because certainly our industry hasn't been looked after anywhere near as well. So, have you found a lot more people coming to you from, like, for instance, UK, if there's filming that needs to be done, that maybe they would have brought crews over, that they're now like phoning you?
Yes, absolutely. I have a huge network in the States, and especially in the UK, which I still consider as my second home, living there years ago and working there as well. But the amount of jobs I've had coming in has just been unbelievable. And the one just coming in from London now is like everyone else. They need an interview, and they need the camera to be set up so they can, conduct the interview from London or Washington or whatever they are. In this case, London, and then we just set it up on Skype or Zoom, whatever, and make a return signal so they can see us, we can see them. Record it locally. They do the interview. We did that with me and my sound guy 2 weeks ago for 60 minutes, and just shipped the whole thing on an FTP afterwards. And we're talking about 10, 15, 20 jobs just within the past 3 months like that. And that's really unusual.
Yeah, there's certainly over here, I know there's a lot of people who are doing exactly the same, working for maybe clients they've had before from America and things, but no one's flying over to produce or direct anymore, and everything's been done on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or a new one for me. I did something in the summer with something called Blue Jeans. And when the American client said, "Oh, we need you to do Blue Jeans," I was like, "What? Wear them?" bring them along to the shoot? I hadn't heard of it before, but no, it's like Zoom, but it's the one we use. So, but certainly that's just something else we've all had to buy, the little boxes to plug into the camera to be able to give that as a feed.
Yeah. But I even took some of that way of working. We even implemented that for some of the shoots here that we would never have thought of if not the COVID has forced us to it. Some of the football matches when you can get in and still do your feature stuff, to get some high speed stuff of selected players for a feature later on. And my producer will still be at the actual football ground, but I will just hook up to Zoom and just stream my camera feed directly to his iPhone with all the info and time codes and everything in. And he will just be seated on the press stands and just watching the game and watching my footage, only with a couple of seconds delay. That was something we just didn't think of before COVID. So in that sense, that gave us something extra that I'm confident we will be able to do after the whole COVID ended. So it's not all bad. It's not all good, but it's definitely not all bad.
Yeah, Klaus, in actual fact, he did tell you that he was watching it in the press stand, but I can tell you he was in the bar watching it on his phone between his
probably,
so,
yeah.
almost certainly Carlsberg, I guess, over there. So guys, any questions between all of you guys?
I have one for Nick, actually.
Please fire away, Klaus.
Yep.
Because I couldn't help laughing when I heard about the story about you being bombarded with these. I don't believe it's emails, but VHS tapes with this guy, showing everything he could, because when I moved to London in the mid-90s, I sold everything I had, absolutely everything I had. I mean, my stereo, my TV, my baby sister took care of that, but everything we just sold and just moved to London. Stayed at a hostel at some dodgy place in South London. And I had no idea what the industry looked like in England at that time. And there's no such thing as internet. You just couldn't look things up, and didn't know anyone. And I was at a pub in Kilburn where we lived, and I saw the credits after a football match. And I figured out that if these guys over here do the same as we do in Denmark, the last two names on the credits are possibly the most two important ones. And that was Tony Mills and Andy Melvin from Sky Sports. And I just started bombarding them with VHS tapes from everything I've made over the years, because I wanted to get into the sports OB production, preferably with Sky and BBC. Plus, I wanted to get into learn how the Brits was producing E&G features, which I finally did after a few years at TWI, now called IMG. And it was exactly the same thing, just bombarding them with tapes, literally like 4, 5, 6 tapes. And at some point, Andy Melvin just called me up and says, "Please stop," And I'm like, "Well, just give me a shot at it. Just give me one chance." And just to shut me up, he invited me to Wembley, where England was playing. I think it was Peru. Michael Owen's first game ever, to be the youngest ever to have to be the youngest player ever to play on a national team. And I came up there. I met the guys in the OB team, and I met Tony and Andy, and bingo, they hired me. So sometimes it works.
Definitely.
I certainly know that with my little company, if I get people sending in CVs, which we do an awful lot, the temptation is not to answer the first one, because if they are really keen, they'll send you another one. So we know they've sent them, and I've got the list, but I don't answer the first one just to see. And if they don't, if they're not that keen, they're not going to write again. If they pester you, it does work. So it's a way forward. Guys, thanks so much. Any other questions? Okay, I'll throw one out there for you all then. So I'll start with Laura. Laura, on your job, but others, you can think about this as well, guys. But what one piece of technology would you like which would make your life easier or better for what you're trying to achieve?
Oh gosh, I don't know at the moment.
5G that worked
Really
everywhere.
desolate. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, today I wouldn't mind some broadband. That would be great. Just a little thing. No, do you know what I'm quite excited about is the day where rushes come back very quickly from a shoot. That would be the day someone properly nails the kind of cloud delivery system for really high quality, sort of high data rushes will be amazing. You know, especially for sort of big volume stuff that I do. It's so good when we can get it back quickly and not rely on a FedEx system. So yeah, if someone can kind of start working on that, that would be really great. That's what I would like, please.
And I can almost guarantee that on behalf of all the GTC members who do single camera work, that just before that happens, we'd like a way of downloading it much quicker than we can do at the moment, and then uploading it much quicker than we can do at the moment, so that whilst everyone else is in the bar after a shoot, we're not up in our rooms doing all the downloads. So Nick, what about you? What would you like in your dream world?
Time machine, please, so we can jump forward and get into normal filming, or go back and film something we missed. Or the ability to film something with my eyes. You know how like you're on set and you're in the edit and you go, I remember that bit, and then they spend hours and hours and hours, and then you just realise it was something you saw and it wasn't filmed by the camera. That would be good. Sorry, they're not very sensible suggestions. I'd like.
No, it's something I've thought about a lot. Like those one time, where you haven't got the camera and you see something, but then I thought about it, and there's a lot of times that you wouldn't want to see what I'm looking at. So it's much better that we don't do that. So, Matt, what about you?
Can I go for a clone? Another one of me would be really helpful.
Yeah. No, not a bad idea. I think I did a program on that many, many years ago on, I can't remember the name of the sheep now, but there was a famous sheep that was cloned. Dolly the sheep. Yeah. And I'm not sure anyone would want to clone.
I think they've got better assets.
That's good. Let's hope so. And Klaus, is there anything in your little dream world for when this is all over that you'd like to have come across?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I spend more time than I usually do in front of the computer. I edit and grade as well. So instant rendering, that would be nice. I'm just honestly sick and tired of looking at that, line just moving slowly. So instant rendering, that would be nice.
Okay, so from someone who grew up with dial-up internet, we're now wanting instant rendering. It's like we're not asking for much, are we really? Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really nice to meet you, Laura, Nick, Matt and Klaus. Thank you for being part of the second half of our first roundtable. We'll let you know when there's another one, everyone. I'm sorry for a few glitches early on. I believe that it was much smoother towards the end. But it will be available as a recording up on Vimeo through the GTC website. So again, thanks to Ollie, Marcus, Will and Hannah, who were in the first part, and also particular thanks to Andy Rake, Graham Risdon and Ricardo Alfano, who've been helping us out behind the scenes and making sure everyone can talk to each other and it got out there on air. So on behalf of the GTC, myself, Graham Maunder, thank you very much, and stay safe, everyone, and hopefully see you all soon.
The GTC Council has overseen many things, and we have moved forward at an amazing pace for an organisation of our size. We have managed to continue with our core activities and have quickly adapted to be able to offer even more workshops than normal. Although these are obviously now online, it gives us the advantage that members are now able to watch recordings of them. Many thanks, as always, to Clive North for his continued running of our workshops. At the beginning of the year 2020 BC, that's before COVID, we held some more of our first aid courses, and, as always, these were very well attended. We have continued to offer the GTC Public Liability Scheme for the 4th year now, and it continues to be a very popular benefit, offering great value for money. The discount deal for GTC members negotiated with Cornwallis for VW vans has now been used by 94 members. Zerb and GTC in Focus publications continue to go from strength to strength, and a big thank you must go to Rob Emanuel and Roger Richards for their hard work in keeping these publications so current and valuable to our members. Alan Duxbury has continued his sterling work with the Bill Vinton GTC University Award for Student Films. Alex Wade has continued to provide invaluable help as a first port of call for legal inquiries and has been particularly helpful for the Council with regard to a few issues that have arisen recently. Membership continues to grow, and the forum and Facebook pages, together with our own website, provide an invaluable source of information for our members. Now, none of this, of course, could have been done without the hard work of the GTC Council members, who continue to demonstrate their willingness and determination to make the GTC ever more relevant and inclusive for all those working with the moving image. And I would particularly like to thank the new council members who have proven to be particularly hands-on. Our better social media presence being just one example of the work by Peter and Hannah. A final few mentions and massive thanks must also go to James French, who stood down from his advertising and sponsorship role after many successful years, and to Simon Edwards, who has stepped in so well at such a difficult time. I also want to mention and thank Sally Garrett and Alison Chapman, amongst others, for their work on yet another amazing mental health supplement that couldn't have come at a more appropriate time, as well as Hazel Palmer for her continuing work with diversity issues, helped by John Tarby and Drew Hartley. Final thanks go to Kate Harvest and her team for releasing the members survey so that we really do know that we, on Council, are steering the good ship GTC in the direction that our members want. I would urge all of you, please, to take the short time that it will take to complete the survey. A lot of hours has been spent on it, and it really is a way for you to let us know what you all want.